No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, or his background, or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Nelson Mandela, 1994.
Hello, I'm Levi Kula. I'm 19 years of age, and at the moment I'm studying architecture in Berlin.
So my name is Toni, I'm 19 years old and I was born in Berlin.
My name is Nicholas Jean-Louis. I'm 19 years old and I work in the reception of a hotel here in Berlin. I was born in Pembroke Pines in Florida.
For decades, racism has been a prominent issue in German football. Research suggests that racist acts are mainly committed in men's and youth football.
On certain occasions, there's been times where it wasn't blatant racism, but it was kind of like when we went back with the team into the locker rooms, we're like, yo, wasn't that kind of racist? I remember one of the games, you know, in Germany, a lot of players, or not a lot of players, but when you have the number 88, that's generally seen as potentially racist because the 8th letter in the alphabet is H, and then they'll use it for Heil Hitler. So especially in Germany, teams generally don't have the 88 or don't like to choose the 88, and there was one specific occasion where we had a game that was in the outskirts of Berlin where racism is more common than in the center just because of less diversity in the populace. So there a player had the 88 and we didn't go back a second time to play that team.
My teammates were unwelcomed, and I felt like my teammates were at a disadvantage due to their skin color, and I feel like especially on a football pitch, there's no space for that.
According to Bucher, most racism is targeted by spectators towards opposing teams and their fans. Migrant football clubs are the target of racism by right-wing extremism.
So during the game, the spectators from the enemy team were also listening to right-wing music and were tending to that kind of music and were playing it really loud. So that was also very disturbing.
According to sport experts, racist incidents in amateur football can be systematically analyzed to be affiliated with right-wing extremism.
I feel like especially in these times, there's not necessarily a growing problem, but there's definitely a problem going on. and which has to be well talked about, and something has to be done.
So what do you think can be done to combat racism?
I feel like the governing bodies of Berlin football are basically at a point where they have to step in, and they're obviously doing things, and there's many banners, say no to racism or whatever, around it, but there's no punishment for there's no punishment for the people that act racist against players, or in general that act racist on the pitch.
The fate of acts of racism are often passed on to referees. However, for many referees it is difficult to make a judgment call because racism is so difficult to prove. It's difficult to even address the problem. After all, could you tell where exactly racism starts and ends? Imagine dealing with the pressure of a referee.
Unfortunately, I couldn't do anything because we as referees have to hear that personally. We can't just rely on the sayings of the player that are involved, because that would just be a lot of chaos, because every player would say anything that would get the red card or something else to another player.
So I said to the trainer, where do you know the rules from? And then one of the enemy players said to me, well, you're not from Germany, how dare you tell my trainer that what the rules really are? And that was kind of, yeah.
You thought it was weird that you spoke to the trainer because of the color of your skin.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know what his problem was, because I said, bro, I'm from Germany, so what do you want?
You grew here up all your life.
Exactly.
According to Betts, the presence of racism in football is very diverse. In general, you could say Eastern Germany experienced more racism than the west of Germany.
Yes, it is a growing issue, or at least there's growing awareness about it. But in soccer, there's a lot of emotions at play, no matter what, be it positive or negative. So when people start to provoke the other team or the other players with insults and so on, I feel it's very easy for it to turn into racism, especially at the amateur level. I can definitely see it happening with the way that things have escalated on the field on other occasions with my teammates. So it's definitely very easy to fall into becoming racist when the game is so emotional.
Football fans are driven by emotions, which can be fuel for a healthy passion. However, it can also turn into hate and discrimination.
In football, there's always a sense of rivalry, and a bit of hate comes with that, but I also feel like there is a point where a rivalry stops being a rivalry, and there is a point where a rivalry just turns into hate, and I think that happens a bit too often.
10% of members of German sport clubs have a migration background. Puker indicates that legally binding regulations that prevent racism are not common in German sports.
Now,
what do you think can be done to combat racism in football, in amateur football?
I don't know if there's anything that you can do specifically in football to combat it, because I think it just depends on the people, especially in amateur football. These aren't people that spend a large amount of time with their teams. Depending on the league, it's often, they just come for training, come for the games, and that's it. So I think it depends a lot more on the education that they receive and the people that they surround themselves with. Of course, that doesn't mean that the environment in the soccer club as a whole can't benefit it or help raise awareness and get rid of racism, but I think it's a larger problem that has to do with education and the players' upbringing as a whole.
So do you think that in training and in the club, racism should be addressed more?
I think it depends on the team. I think there's no real need to address it if your team specifically doesn't have any problems with it. However, if as a coach you notice that maybe your team has had problems with it, then I'd say there is a definite need to address it.
Racism is a prominent problem in football. It has been for as long as we can remember, and it will remain an issue in the future. Will it ever fade away? We can't say that with certainty, but we have to at least acknowledge the issue, and this documentary is an attempt to fire up the debate.